Thank you very much to the organizers of the conference. It's been really a treat to spend the last 2 days with everyone here and listen to the talks. I really enjoyed the conversation. These are not the kind of conversations or talks I'm used to. So I really enjoy the breaking of the barrier and speak to regulators, governments. I'm the founder of RoboCap. About 13 years ago, I was spending my weekends building drones or fixing drones as a hobby, I should say. I started to learn about 3D printing, a new technology that I found revolutionary. At the same time, I learned about the autonomous vehicle challenge from Stanford that later became Waymo. And I was watching videos on YouTube that became interesting from Boston Dynamics, where their humanoid robots were finally able to walk. And so 13 years ago, I came to the realization that we were going into a new industrial revolution, not just a new theme, not just a new trend, but a new industrial revolution, in the sense that every sector, without exception, from transportation, healthcare, manufacturing, services, would be completely disrupted. On the society in itself would be disrupted as well. And that is really the most important thing that is going on right now, much more than the geopolitics, even in the Middle East. The revolution of AI on physical AI is what is moving the markets, much more than the war in Iran. As an investor of the last 13 years, I've seen we've invested in a number of companies. Some of them, 9 years ago, we invested in NVIDIA, plus 7,000%. Intuitive Surgical, today Intuitive Surgical is about as big as Johnson & Johnson. It's the largest surgical robotics company in the world, but it is almost as big as Johnson & Johnson. People don't know about it. We looked and we've seen companies growing like DJI that have become so huge. We met 10 years ago with the founders of DeepMind, who were quite approachable. They were not as well known as today. And we invested in other companies like CrowdStrike when they had about 2% market share in cybersecurity or endpoint protection. Today, it's well over 25%. They are bigger than Microsoft in cybersecurity. What I would like to get to is AI and robotics are real. I mean, I don't need to convince you today, but we had to convince a number of investors that this was going to happen. This is happening now. Like the inflection point is not 5-10 years from now. We are in the inflection point. And initially, we were investing a lot into industrial robotics, companies like KUKA that got taken over by the Chinese Midea. We invested into Swedish metal 3D printing company that got taken over by General Electric. I think it was Arkham. Our investment base has changed a lot. Today, we have a lot more investments in AI. If you include physical AI, so autonomous vehicle, logistics automation, humanoid robots, about, I would say, 80 to 85% of our portfolio of robotics automation AI is related to AI. Back 10 years ago, it was probably less than between, let's say, maybe around 5 to 10%. So what I'm getting to is that AI is like electricity, like the second industrial revolution. It's coming into everything, absolutely everything, including robotics. Now, thanks to our advisory board, including Mirko Kovac, who spoke yesterday, they told us 10 years ago there's not enough exposure in the portfolio to AI. So 10 years ago, I went to one of the most interesting conferences in AI at Oxford, where I met many of the founders of the leading AI companies today. And it was the same problem as today. it was very clear that AI was going to be huge, was going to disrupt business model, was going to disrupt the job industry, and that it was going to disrupt the defense as well. So just to give you an idea, with the nuclear bomb, the nuclear bomb gives an incentive to one country to not use it because of the counter-strike risk. So that's why the Soviets and the Americans never used it. With AI on robotics, it is exactly the opposite. It creates an incentive to every country to use it, not to avoid it. So it does change the geopolitics completely, unfortunately, in this respect. But where I was going to go to is, thanks to our advisory board, they told us we don't have enough AI exposure back in 2016. And we started to invest in it. We started to invest in NVIDIA. We started to invest into computer vision systems initially that are still used mainly for industrial application like quality control or predictive maintenance in factories. Today, our portfolio is completely different. There are massive investments in AI data centers. You know, it's 1 year ago, Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, predicted that this industry would get to over $1 trillion of yearly spending by 2028, I'm sorry. So that prediction was in 2025, and his prediction is that we would get by 2027, 2028 to $1 trillion of yearly spending just for AI data center. We got there now, 1 year ahead. So even him, who the media claim was way too optimistic, he was way too pessimistic. NVIDIA today, just to get some metrics, has over $1 trillion of orders between now and the end of 2027 for 2 of their products. Not for all of their products, just for the 2 oldest products, not for the ones that they're going to launch in 6 months, in 1 year. And that is assuming that they don't find new customers, that they don't launch any new products. The scale is absolutely huge. Last year, most of the US GDP growth came from AI and robotics. The majority of the US GDP growth last year came from AI and robotics. Data centers are making huge progress. So we were speaking about energy consumption. About 2/3 of the energy consumption today in data centers doesn't come from the chips. It comes from the networking. It comes from moving the data from one point to another one in a data center. And we are entering into a new revolution of photonics. Instead of using copper cables, electric cables, we are starting to use fiber optics. And that should cut, for the same level of performance, the energy consumption by more than 2/3. Space has gone also through a revolution. So thanks to Elon Musk on reusable rockets, which are autonomous, that are landing on autonomous floating drones, the cost of sending 1 kilogram to space in 10 years has dropped from about $50,000 to less than $1,000. Progressively, it will evolve to a few hundreds of dollars. The automation of the manufacturing of semiconductors, companies like ASML, TSMC, Lasertech, and so on, have become hugely important. AI is not just an option in cybersecurity. AI became the whole of cybersecurity. Today, the vast majority of the market in cybersecurity is dominated by AI companies. Companies that are AI first, and that were relatively small 5 years ago, but now they have become dominant. And of course, we are here to speak about physical AI. So in the case of physical AI, we invest into logistics automation. If you think of companies like Ocado, AutoStore, warehouse automation like the ones used by Amazon, this is happening now. In terms of my view or my forecast, if I take that risk, in terms of roadmap, the next step for physical AI is autonomous vehicle from cars. So if you take the example of Waymo, Waymo is making almost 1 million autonomous rides per week. Let that think in. 1 million autonomous rides per week. We don't have it in Europe yet. They are testing now in the UK. They are testing in a few cities. But in Phoenix, in San Francisco, they have become the norm. And you see them a lot because they can operate 20 hours per day. So where a normal car would operate, let's say, only 1 hour per day, you would see it 20 times more on the road than a human-driven car. This is happening now. Autonomous cars are already safer than humans. According to Swiss Re, the reinsurance company, they are already 10 to 20 times safer than humans. So while in some European countries the question was, we need to fix the unlikely scenario if a car needs to kill the passenger or run over a pregnant woman or some children, something that really never happens. They have moved forward with the technology. And they are not alone. China as well is moving very fast. And the US is now moving progressively from a state regulation to a federal regulation. And I think that Europe should do the same. There should not be one regulation country by country for autonomous vehicle. We should have one regulation. We all drive on the same side with the exception of the UK. There's no reason why we should not have one regulation. Who thinks that the European car industry will survive the next 10 years? Okay, that's your view. Yeah.
No, the question is if it will survive.
Yes, yeah, you think it will survive, okay. Let's put it this way, it is struggling at least when it comes to electric cars. As far as I know, there's not a single European car manufacturer in electric cars that are making profits making electric cars. You only have players in the US, in China that are making profits. Everyone else in Europe is losing money with electric cars. If you look at autonomous cars, who are the leaders in autonomous driving? You have Waymo in the US, you have Mobileye in Israel, you have Wave in the UK, you have Oxa, you have WeRide, Popani AI. I struggle as an investor, and I want to be honest with you, I don't see the European leaders outside of the UK. And as investors, our base scenario is that the European car industry will not survive. Even if you take one of the largest players like Volkswagen, they've outsourced the whole tech in a way. Like if you think of the software entertainment, they've outsourced that to Rivian. When you think of the autonomy, they outsourced that to Mobileye. I struggle to see where it will come from. And I could see it coming 10 years ago. Where was the investment 10 years ago in autonomous driving in Europe? However, like the Americans are doing really well. Humanoid robots is a really interesting topic. I think while autonomous vehicles are happening now, and I haven't spoken about drones, I think that in drones, Europe has really an interesting shot. And you have players like Helsing that are doing well, raising money, are leaders in their space. But in humanoid robots, I think it's 4 or 5 years away. Humanoid robots are not focusing on entertainment. They do entertainment because they haven't fixed a problem, a dexterity problem. They have acquired a gross dexterity, which is good enough for certain applications in logistics, in some basic manufacturing, but not for making your bed, cooking. And that's why you see them for entertainment. But the reason why they focus right now on entertainment or on logistics is because they want to train them. At some point, humanoid robots will probably become the largest industry in the world, bigger than any other industry in the world. And I think it's really important that the Europeans focus on this one. I think it's possible that we get there. Like the cost of hardware components has dropped dramatically. If you think of LiDARs, the cost in average has dropped by 10x of the last 10 years. So I think we will be able to get there at scale. And I'm extremely excited about the progress, not just of ChatGPT on the LLM, but of real-world models, of foundational models for the real world. There's huge progress we have seen made with companies like Google and NVIDIA to train digital twins and then move onto the real world. Now, moving on to Europe. Europe has some champions. I mean, Hexagon has developed, I think it was one of the questions yesterday, Hexagon is one European industrial company that has developed some humanoid robots. You have a Swiss motor company called Maxon. They make the motors used by Intuitive Surgical, by Boston Dynamics, by SpaceX. So there are some European champions that need to be leveraged. You have Mistral. Mistral is one of the best frontier models that you can find. I do not understand why Europe is not trying to promote this technology in schools. You are? Okay, I'd love to hear about it. But I think that it would be good to promote it in schools, to promote it in the administration. Europe has strong academics. It's very clear. You've seen Professor Kovac, Professor Dario. And if you look at the first funds in robotics and AI, 10 years ago, all the funds in robotics and AI were based in Europe. Not in Japan, not in China, not in the US. In terms of investments in AI and robotics, the three, I would say probably four first funds in robotics and AI are all based in Europe. So there is expertise to invest into that field. I would add to that one of the largest, actually the largest investor in the world is based in Norway. So there is money in Europe to be invested in AI and robotics. But as an investor, I'm concerned. We used to have about a third of our investments in Europe 10 years ago. Today, it's probably close to 5 or 6%. And we really struggle to find good companies that are, let's say, first based in Europe, and second listed in Europe. I think that some change need to happen. First, the ESG policy in Europe need to be adapted. Europe needs to defend itself, and it already started to change. You can have ESG funds that are investing into defense. That has changed with the war in Ukraine. The energy policy needs to change. It is not possible to have AI data centers if you don't have a strong energy policy. And I would follow on that. For robotics, you need to have a rare earth resources policy. If you don't have rare earths, if you don't have motors, this is like the microchips for AI data centers. You will need that for robotics. As it becomes clear that companies need less employees, and we see it within companies that are performing well, even in the Silicon Valley, they are reducing the number of employees. The market is penalizing business models that are based on the number of seats. So if your business model is based on the number of seats or not based on consumption, I would say on average, the share price of the stocks is down 40% of the last 6 to 8 months, because it becomes clear that companies will have less employees. At the same time, it means that it becomes easier to create a company. So I think that Europe should focus on an economy that is promoting entrepreneurs, not employees. And that's a radical shift of mindsets, one that requires a culture of risk. And I would add that the role of a bank is not to gather money. It is to manage risk. You can look in the dictionary, what is the definition of a bank? The definition of a bank is an institution that manages risk. So Europe needs to change its mindsets and to adopt a culture of risk. It is possible. I think that if you think of a country like Israel, which has probably a civilization which is 3,000 years old, it has become the startup nation. It is not incompatible to have thousands of years legacy and be focused on the future. We need to cut the red tape. I learned about the EU Inc., which is a welcome move, but I think a lot more needs to be done. 1 billion is not enough. One data center costs 20 to 30 billion, just as an example. You can see the funding that some of the companies are getting. 1 billion is clearly not enough to be serious. The regulation should be here to promote the technology. So we should have some regulation that gives a framework, but that should be as loose as possible. If the EU Act is a success, why are not more companies moving to Europe to develop their AI companies? I think that new regulation should be first implemented into one country, and if that becomes a success for templates, then rolled out to the rest of the EU. And one of the most important change that will be important for Europe in order to be a leader in AI and robotics is to embrace the technology. That is a fundamental mindset change that needs to happen. I see too much fear about AI and robotics in Europe that I do not see in China, that I do not see in many parts of the US, that I do not see in Korea, for example. Embracing the technology, which means to teach the technology, but also to make sure that the governments, when they can automate a task, when they can automate a job, they do it. It really needs to happen. Otherwise, I don't know where we will be in 5 to 10 years from now. And I don't think that we have 10 years. You may have seen, and maybe it's a conversation for the panel, the software industry is going through a disruption. In short, with AI frontier models like the one of Anthropic, you can create apps in a few minutes, pretty much for free, and that can replace other apps for which you were used to pay thousands of euros per month. And the service industry is currently undergoing the same change. If you think of the brokerage industry, a lot of the brokers from Charles Schwab, and I could name many more, have lost a lot in their market cap over the last few months because new players can offer wealth planning, tax optimization with their AI models for free. And either you adopt it in the next few months or you will become obsolete. And right now, the market is putting a terminal value of 0 to many software industries, many software companies that have failed to adopt AI fast enough. So just to conclude, I hope that you don't feel depressed, but my message is really Europe needs to be serious about investing in AI and robotics. It has the talents. I speak with startups, and they don't find too much trouble finding the A round, the seed round. And then there is a death valley as they are scaling. And right now, I don't see the alternative than moving to the US or moving to China, but more likely moving to the US in order to scale, to address one large market, and also to get the funding during this death valley. But hopefully this is going to change, and that can only change if Europe, not just the government, but all the institutions, like why is it not mandatory for banks to have a minimum allocation into startups, into innovation? Why are they forced to buy a certain number of government bonds that are yielding 2 to 3% or not investing into the SME? This should be the role of the banks. This should be the role of the governments in Europe. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you so much.